Hello, peeps. We are back for another episode. And I think this one's going to be good, mostly because it's coming from one of our listeners. So here's the deal. The name of it: How to Handle Your Toxic Mom and Her Relationship as a Grandma. This is a good one. We need to talk about like the do's and don'ts of letting our children be a part of our mother's lives. And can she have a relationship with her grandchildren, even though she may have a dysfunctional relationship with you? So if you're a part of our weekly newsletter, which I hope you are, if you're not, go to my website, phylismantelli.com, subscribe for my weekly newsletter. I kind of keep you updated on all the things that are going on in my life and some suggestions for you. And also, the very first pop-up that comes on when you're looking at the website is, hey, you want to sign up for Tuesday Talks newsletter? And people say yes, and then they also get a freebie from me, and then you can keep track of all the episodes. It just keeps you moving on all the things that we're doing in the UnMothered community. One of the things that was brilliant, my daughter Dominique, giving her a shout out for this, is she added on the newsletter, hey, what kind of topics do you want to hear on the podcast? And so people can anonymously write in questions of what they want to hear on the podcast, and then we'll research it, or if I have experience with it, when most of the time I do have experience with some of these questions, then I can help you, or I can research it and find out if there's a clear answer for it. As always, I'm not a therapist. I am a coach. I'm a trauma-informed coach. I'm a personality coach. I'm a writer-speaker coach. I have lots of certifications, but you can always take this information in little bits if you want. You may not agree with some of the things that I'm saying. A lot of this stuff that I talk about are things that I've either gone through personally or walked through personally with people that I have coached. So I know what I speak of, and also I'm open to learning more. And so I'm always reading other books. I'm researching things. I watch a lot of programs where I'm like, why did they come up with that speech? And you know me, we're always going to reference back to a movie or something, because I'm always writing. I'm fascinated with people coming up with storylines of like, why are they thinking that? That must have happened in their family or something like that. So just to preface all of that is all of these things that these topics that we come up with are usually from either other people's stories, my stories, or something that I'm researching. So just to make that clear, you can take this with a grain of salt. You can take it 100% and say, that's really good advice, I'm going to do that. But just to preface it by always saying, I'm not a therapist. I don't have, and listen, I don't even think therapists have all the answers all the time. And I know there's good and bad therapists even out there too. So you have to find the thing that gives you comfort, that makes sense to you, and something that's going to work for your family. And then I think you found the golden ticket. So today we're going to dive into this question. And this was such a good question because I am now a grandma. And also I was a mom who had kids that was trying to maneuver this life with my mom. And then in the middle of researching this question, I have a movie reference. So we're going to dive into a storyline in a little bit that kind of matched what this person that wrote in saying, I want to know, like, can my kids have a relationship with my mom apart from me? So, that's a tough one. Is the boundary only for you with your mom, or does it split when it comes to your children? Good question. What if your kids really love your mom and she's different around them than she is with you? Can you allow them to nurture that relationship? Can you respect your children's wishes if they don't want to go around your mom? And how do you explain that to your mother? So this was my story. I'll share my story first. And I think I might have shared this before, but it's worth saying again, mostly because I love the growth that happened through this. So when my children were born, I was excited because I thought children were the tie that was going to like bring us all back together, and my mom wasn't being abused by men anymore, so surely she would want to share in this beauty of my family so that she could join in the family and she could be around these children in a different way than the way she raised us, and really just take a breath and relax and love these grandchildren. That was not the case. So part of being a narcissistic mom is that you can't get out of your way. Like she can't, like she couldn't. It just was not something that even crossed her mind because she couldn't get out of her own mind. Every single thing revolved around her. So I would bring the babies around. My children are 3.5 years apart. So I would, tote the little kids over, present the baby to her, want her to look at this through new eyes and see how beautiful this family was and how she could really just embrace and love these kids. And she did that for about 2 minutes. I got the oohs and the ahs. I got, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. They're such great babies. Like, you must be so excited. And then in about 5 minutes time, it switched over to, ugh, babies. They're probably so hard, just all the negative things that come along with kids, which is true. I'm not discounting, but it's like she kind of did it. That was her lead. It wasn't like, oh, it's really hard, but oh man, aren't they just a blessing and aren't they awesome? It was like, ugh, gosh, I bet you're just so tired and they're just so much work, and there's always dirty diapers and just that kind of stuff. And so I walked away feeling so confused as to, should I embrace motherhood or am I supposed to hate it? I'm not sure. Like, so confused over her reactions. And then knowing full well, like, she's wrong, because I truly am she's wrong and right. If I'm being honest, I've talked about this where, I had postpartum, especially with Dominique, my second daughter. Mike was gone and I was knee deep in children. And I always say it was like a single mom with benefits. So he was providing for us. I had all the food in the world. I had a great house to live in. I had all the accoutrements, right? And I was lonely as heck. I was sad. And then I had this mom who was like, ugh, life is so hard. And so I couldn't go to her. I was feeling overwhelmed. I was having horrible thoughts. I was having postpartum. So having a mom that wasn't being loving towards my kids was really hard. But at that time in my life, I was like, but she's my mom and these are her grandchildren. I want to try and have them have a relationship with her. So I kept taking the kids over there, and the kids started getting older. And as they got older, so I can't remember the time, but I think between the ages of 8 and 10, I remember one time leaving the house after I had the kids with me, and they're sitting in the back seat, and they said, Mom, do we have to go to Grandma Pat's? And I thought, one, shocking that they could voice that, and two, beautiful that they could voice that. And I looked at them and they were just like, they were scared because they didn't want to be disrespectful, but they also knew that this was a safe home where we could speak truth. And I said, you absolutely don't have to go see her if you don't want to. And they said, yeah, we kind of just don't want to go over there anymore. She's really mean. Wow. So this is part of the thing is, are your kids enjoying the relationship with your mom, or are they doing it out of obligation to be kind to you? There's a difference. So if you're just, making these kids go over there and suffer it out because this is your family, you have to do this, I don't think that's okay. Also, the dynamics were so different from our house to hers. I didn't speak cruel words over my children. I didn't speak negative words over my kids. So now I'm taking them to a home where that was how I grew up, and that's what she's continuing to do with her grandchildren. And so that was really tough. I wanted to be respectful on both sides. But when my kids said, we don't want to go anymore, I'm like, boom, that's it. That's the answer. We're done. And so I said, absolutely not. And so then I had to explain to my mom when after a while I wasn't bringing the kids. She's like, where's the kids? Like, why aren't you bringing the kids? I was like, oh, they're really busy with sports. Oh, they got a lot of stuff going on. Now, mind you, my relationship, I couldn't go no contact with my mother. My siblings had, and my mom needed help. My mom had some medical issues. And so there was a part of me where I was like, I knew she couldn't really hurt me physically, and emotionally, I just had to like buck up and know, like, any words that are spoken over me right now, she's doing it out of her own hurt. And I had to talk myself into it. And let me tell you, that's a God thing. Because had I not been a Christian, I would have done the same thing that my siblings did and just opted out. And I'm not saying my siblings weren't religious, but it was easier for them to like walk away. One, because my sister lived far away. She was over 3 hours away. And so, it wasn't convenient for her to just pick up the slack and come and take care of my mom on the daily. My brother was a whole nother story. He just was angry and decided he didn't want to be around her. So I did have to have somewhat of a relationship with my mom. And this is where I learned boundaries, really strong boundaries. It was like I took care of her to make sure she was okay. I didn't fall into the trap of saving her, being there for everything, all the things that narcissist moms love to do. I opted out of that, and she would get mad at me all the time. And I was like, I don't care, because I am raising this family in a different way, and I really don't care what your wishes are when it's concerning that. So they did not have a relationship with their grandma after the age of 10. They just opted out. They were like, this woman is crazy. And I hate using that word, but that's what they would say. They're like, she's crazy. And I'm like, well, she's sick, but it was really hard for them to see something so different from the mother that they were living with. They were like, this was your mom? Like, this is how she treated you, and you're not like that, Mom. And I'm like, well, that took a lot of work and a lot of prayer and a lot of help from other people. When they say you need a community, you need a tribe, they're not lying. Like, we need a tribe. We need a community of women to come alongside us and show us what healthy motherhood looks like. And so if that includes leaving your mom behind because she's not willing to play the game and, try to be healthy herself and do something different, you have children to raise. That is your most important job. So that's the one thing that I'm going to tell you, is that your number one responsibility is the health, and the mental health and the physical health of these children that God has given you. And so that is your number one thing. And if that means negating some things with your own mom because she won't listen to your rules and she won't be respectful and treat your children the way you would want them to be raised, then she does not get the honor of being around your children. It is an honor to be around your children, and grandparents should treat that with respect. I will say, as a grandma now, I try to be extremely respectful of what my kids' rules are for raising their children, because even in our family dynamics, there are some things that my kids do differently. My daughter, I only have one that is a mom yet. And she'll say, this is how we discipline, or this is, and I'm like, really? And then we watched it and we're like, oh, that is a little bit better than the way we did it. So example, Mike and I had to watch the kids, 3 grandkids, just this last couple weeks. And the parents had to go away for a couple days, and they said, hey, can you watch the kids? They would love, this is the greatest thing. The kids would love for you to watch them. Absolutely. Like, we adore those kids. They crack us up on the minute by minute. Like, they're so funny and so cute, and they're a lot of work. And so we said, yeah. And then as it happens, after, the first day is great, everybody's having fun. We do drop off for school. We come home, we play games, we do all the things. Second day, it got kind of a little crazy. And as you know, with multiple kids in the house, could even be one really, someone's gonna have a meltdown. So one of the kids had a meltdown, and Mike and I were like, oh, here we go. And I remember back when our kids would have that kind of a meltdown, we were just like, go to your room. Just go to your room and cry. We don't want to hear this. We're having dinner. We don't want to deal. But we remembered the way they had done this. We have sat at dinner tables where we've seen this happen. And so we modeled what they have done or do with their children, and it worked. And so we were just calm with it. We didn't buy into it. At one point, we were like, okay, great. You don't want to eat your dinner. Mike goes, well, let me take your hamburger away. Then it was like, no, this craziness. And then he put it back down. He goes, okay. And then we sat as we were talking to each other and our oldest grandson, and we're playing with the baby. We saw said grandchild pick up the hamburger and start to eat it. And then the whole temper tantrum dissipated. We were like, oh, that really worked. So that was different than the way we raised our kids, but we respected the rules of what our adult children are modeling for this family. That right there is the most important thing, is that you have to be respectful. If you're a grandparent, if you're taking the child to your grandparents, to your mom or dad's, they have to be respectful of it. There is no room for this, well, this is the way we did it and you turned out fine. Listen, we say that sometimes as a joke, but I really respect that each generation learns more and more of how to raise up godly, calm, healthy, like mentally healthy children that are able to work through things without screaming, yelling. And that happens anyway. Like, I'm not saying that this, oh, it's all great all the time. I mean, I'm just telling you, like, one of the kids had a meltdown. Those things happen. How do we respond to that? How would your mother respond to that if that happened? Is she going to spank the child? Is she going to yell at the child? Those rules have to be set in place. So that's one of the biggest things when you're allowing your children to go and visit your mom, is how is she going to treat them? That's number one. Okay, I always do a movie reference. This one is, I've been binging on Netflix. It's called The Midwife, if you haven't seen it. It's from the BBC channel, so it's an English movie. Everyone's British in this movie, and not even going to pretend to do an accent because I can't. But it was done a while back, because I think there's like 12 seasons or something like that, and I'm on season 3. But in season 3, they did a storyline about one of the midwives. So here's the premise. There were midwives back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s that serviced the lower end of London, women that couldn't afford to go to a regular doctor. They were very poor in this neighborhood. So there was a nunnery that provided housing for midwives. So the nuns lived with these nurses, these midwives. It's called Nonnatus House. And they all lived together, and they would take these calls from local people in the area saying, I'm having a baby, I need help. And they would have these home births. It's a really interesting story, and things I didn't even think about, back in those days. And so what happened was, one of these women, a lot of these women come from well-to-do backgrounds, and then they end up going to these nunneries, which now they're living in kind of what the moms would say the slums. And they're taking care of these people who are poor and helping them deliver their children. So a particular midwife got married. It's a whole thing. She was going to marry this cop, and the mom didn't like it. She's like, how can you stay in this neighborhood? It's horrible. They loved each other and the neighborhood. They grew to love this community. They get married. They have a son. The mom comes to visit. She doesn't approve of the husband. She's just not a nice woman. Now she's a grandma. But here's the thing. What they show is when she sees her grandson, she loves him. And she's so gentle and kind with him. And the husband sees this. And by the way, she's not nice to the husband. And he's so gentle and awesome to her. And so there's a whole storyline that goes with it. But towards the end, she has cancer and she's dying. And they bring her to their home to take care of her. And one of the scenes is the husband bringing the baby boy to the grandma so she can hold him before she dies. And of course, this is a movie and it's beautiful. I'm bawling because it was just so... it was so touching and so raw. And the midwife was remembering all of these things with her mother, the hardships with her mom, and yet she loved her mother. It was a beautiful, beautiful scene. I realize this is a movie. It doesn't happen in real life like that, but it still showed the push-pull of a mother and her daughter, and now this grandchild. And so there was, the show is narrated by an actress called Vanessa Redgrave. Anyone over 50 knows who Vanessa Redgrave is. She's a famous British actress from the 60s, I want to say. She has a beautiful voice, and she narrates every show, and it's fabulous. So you know me, I hear this line and I'm like, oh my gosh, put it on pause. I got to write this down. So this is what she says when one of these scenes are playing, is she says, the world is full of love that goes unspoken. It doesn't mean that it is felt less deeply or that separation leaves a cleaner wound. Its beauty and its pain are in its silence. Yeah. So there were a lot of unspoken words as this midwife sat and watched her mother dying, holding her child, holding this woman, the midwife's child, and her mom holding her grandson. There is beauty and pain in our relationships with our mother, and especially with our children, watching a grandma with her children. We don't know how this story is going to end with us. We don't know if we'll be next to our mom's deathbed. I was. My kids didn't come. Actually, they came one time, like about a month before she passed. They came to see her. She didn't really know who anyone was. There is no easy answer, is what I'm going to get to, is that you have to decide for yourself. I can't sit here and say, absolutely not. Don't let your kids be around your mom. She's toxic. She's horrible. She's this, she's that. I don't know what her relationship is with your children. Your children may love her, and she may love them and be completely different with them than she is with you. Here's what I will say. If she's not respectful of your rules and she's putting words in their head that are demeaning to you and your family, that's not okay. And you have to put an end to that or put a boundary around it. Maybe you do supervised visits so you know what she's saying. You don't leave the kids alone with her. It could be that she is so different with them, so loving with them, that she doesn't treat them the same way she treated you, and they love being around her. I would definitely let that nurture, because I know my best times were around my grandmother. I wished I could appreciate that more now that I'm older, especially now that I'm a grandma. I wished I could have really cherished those times more. I took it for granted. Now that I am a grandma, I realize how beautiful a relationship is with your grandchildren. And not every mom feels that way. Not every woman that's a grandma now really cares. If they don't, they don't. And you can still create a beautiful family within that structure, even if they don't have a grandparent to love and to have experiences with. It's not the end all be all, but I would say, if this is something on your heart, if God is leading you to have some kind of a relationship, and it is a healthy relationship according to like the way they act around your kids. If you're like, wow, they're just really sweet around these kids, they're not like that with me, they may have a different take on things. They may never apologize to you for the way they treated you, but maybe they're going to show that through being around their grandkids. So I can't tell you which one is right, because it's your relationship, it's your experience. But I would say be mindful, see where those situations are. You don't want to be intentionally cold just because you're so mad at your mom and therefore I'm just going to cut off everyone from her. If she's like, hey, can I just see the grandkids? I know, like, we're not okay, but, could I see the grandkids? You can do a supervised visit with her. Bring the kids around, make sure that they know what's being said. We're not trying to cut off moms just because they're not right with us. On the flip side, we always protect our children first. So that's the best kind of explanation that I can give you on mothers, daughters, grandmothers. There are a lot of different scenarios that I've had in family members where, some grandmas aren't really close to they have no desire to have a closeness with their kids. I'm not going to point that out to my kids to make them feel less than. So I think the biggest point out of this whole thing is, how do you make your children feel? Never let them feel less than because the grandmother doesn't want a relationship with them, or you can't let them have a relationship because it's not safe. Always make your child feel loved, know that God has them, that they are here for a reason, that even in the messiness of life, life is exactly the way it's supposed to be. He will guide them to a place where they will be comforted and they will be okay. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. The choice is ours, with prayer, common sense, and thought. And I'm praying that you find peace in all of this. So I hope you loved this episode. Listen, if you have suggestions for other episodes, go and sign up for my newsletter. Anonymously, you can say, here's a topic I want you to talk about, and we will do that for you. And until next time, peeps, I will see you later.